Welcome in, everyone, for this deep dive into the writings of Alice A. Bailey. We've got quite a bit of material to get through on Glamour, Illusion, and Maya, and I am so ready to unpack it all with you.
Oh, these ideas. They might seem a little out there, kind of esoteric at first, but Bailey really believed they have a big impact on how we live our lives. Even how we make decisions, how we see the world.
And it's so interesting as you send in some notes about minimalism and how it's been resonating with you.
Yeah.
And that actually connects perfectly to Bailey's concept of the glamour of materiality. She wrote that the glamour of materiality is so strong in the world today that even those who seek to live a spiritual life are caught in its net.
I think it's interesting how she connects materiality to way more than just possessions, right? It's a whole way of thinking where we think we're only as good as what we own or what we look like to other people. So I'm curious what parts of minimalism are really speaking to you.
Yeah, well, for me, it's about simplifying and trying to, focus on experiences more than stuff.
Hmm.
But I definitely struggle sometimes with wanting things, like, that feeling of if I just had that new gadget or that perfect outfit, then I'd be happy.
Oh, absolutely. I think we all feel that sometimes. Bailey actually gives us some tools for dealing with glamour. One thing she really pushes is mental discipline. She calls it right thinking. It's about recognizing those thought patterns and actually choosing thoughts that match up with our values.
So instead of thinking, I need that new phone to be happy, it's more like, I'm grateful for what I have, and I want to focus on things that bring me joy.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually leads right into another one of Bailey's big ideas, intuition. It's so important for seeing through glamour and illusion.
Okay, let's talk about intuition. I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical. It all sounds a bit mystical,
I totally get that. It can be hard to wrap your head around. But Bailey's take on it is actually pretty practical. She says it's something we can develop through things like meditation and contemplation.
But isn't our mind like the main tool we use to think and make decisions? Where does intuition even fit in?
Well, that's where it gets really cool. Bailey suggests that the mind is super powerful, but it can also create a lot of illusions. She talks about the illusion of ideas, where we think our own mental concepts are the absolute truth. And that's where intuition steps in. It lets us tap into this deeper knowing that goes beyond what our rational mind can grasp.
So it's like our mind is the lens we see the world through, and intuition lets us see past that lens for a clearer view.
That's a great way to put it. And get this. She even says that the astral plane, the realm of emotions and desires, is actually something we humans have created with our collective thoughts and emotions.
Okay, anyway, you're telling me that our thoughts and emotions are shaping reality.
That's what makes Bailey's teaching so powerful. She's not just talking about abstract ideas. She's saying that we're actively creating our reality both individually and together. And that has massive implications for how we live our lives, our relationships, even the state of the world.
So if we're all feeding into this collective astral atmosphere, are we responsible for the kind of energy we're putting out there?
Absolutely. Bailey calls it a collective responsibility. And she says that even our smallest thoughts and feelings matter. They all have an impact on this bigger astral environment.
So it's not just about personal growth, it's about making the world more harmonious and enlightened too.
You got it. And Bailey says one of the biggest things blocking that harmony is something she calls the dweller on the threshold.
Oh, I've seen that term. Sounds a bit scary. What exactly is this dweller?
Okay, think of it as a symbol for all the fears and limitations and negative things that hold us back from our full potential self. Bailey describes it as a composite entity made up of all the unresolved stuff and unpurified desires of our personality.
So it's not some outside monster, it's more like our own inner shadows coming to life.
Precisely. And she says that facing and overcoming this dweller is a vital step on the path to spiritual growth.
But how do we even start to deal with something like that? It sounds overwhelming.
Bailey has a few techniques. One of the most powerful is what she calls standing in spiritual being. It's a deliberate shift from identifying with our personality to identifying with our soul.
So instead of being consumed by our fears and limitations, we connect to that deeper part of ourselves, the part that's connected to something bigger.
Exactly. And when we shift that identification, we can access the strength and wisdom and compassion of our soul. And that's what we need to overcome the dweller's influence.
How do you actually do that standing in spiritual being thing?
Bailey actually gives us a specific exercise. You visualize this bright white light above your head, and that light represents the energy of your soul. You picture yourself merging with that light and letting its wisdom and love and clarity fill you up.
So it's a way to connect to something larger than ourselves, something that can help us break free from our limitations and move forward.
Exactly.
This is all starting to make sense. but I'm still not totally clear on how Bailey defines initiation. It sounds like a mysterious process, but I don't think I really get it.
It's definitely one of those concepts that people make really complicated. But Bailey's approach to initiation is actually pretty down to earth. She says it's a series of experiences that transform us and mark the stages of our spiritual progress. And these experiences aren't about joining secret societies or anything like that. They happen in everyday life, as we face challenges, make tough choices, and learn more about ourselves and the world.
So anytime we have a big moment of growth or understanding, it could be a kind of initiation.
That's a really good way to think about it.
Mhm.
And Bailey says that these initiations are often tough, but they're chances for us to shed old patterns and beliefs and really step into our true potential.
And if every moment of growth is an initiation, then it seems like we're always evolving and transforming.
Exactly. It's not about reaching some finish line. It's an ongoing journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth.
That makes a lot of sense. It seems like Bailey's teachings give us a way to understand not only the spiritual path, but also all the challenges and opportunities of being human.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's not about escaping from the world or reaching some perfect spiritual state. It's about engaging with life more fully, more consciously, and with more compassion.
And to do that, we have to understand those things that can cloud our perception and keep us from experiencing truth.
Which brings us back to glamour, illusion, and Maya.
You know what? Maybe we can unpack those in more detail after a quick break. There's just so much here, and I want to make sure we give each concept the time it deserves. All right, so we've talked a bit about glamour, illusion, and Maya, but I think it's time to really break each one down. Let's start with glamour. What makes it so hard to see, and what can we do about it?
Well, remember that glamour works on the astral plane. It's all about our emotions and desires. It plays on our deepest wants, fears, and insecurities. It makes us think that certain things or experiences are going to bring us happiness.
It's kind of like looking through rose-colored glasses, right? Everything seems so much better than it actually is.
Exactly. Bailey describes it as this psychic fog that messes with our perception and makes it really hard to see clearly. And the sources you sent in really show how this can affect our relationships, the jobs we choose, even our spiritual goals.
You mentioned earlier that standing in spiritual being is one of Bailey's techniques for dealing with glamour. Can you explain how that actually works? It seems a little abstract to me.
Okay, so here's where it gets practical. Bailey gives us this visualization exercise where we imagine a bright white light above our head. It represents the energy of our soul, and we picture ourselves merging with it, letting all its wisdom and love and clarity just flow into us.
So it's a way to connect to a higher energy source, something that can help us see past the distortions of glamour.
Yes, and Bailey says it's not just a one-time thing. It's about making it a regular practice, reminding ourselves daily to shift from identifying with our personality and all its limits to identifying with our soul and all its potential.
I'm starting to see how this ties into the idea of the dweller on the threshold. By strengthening our connection to our soul, we're weakening the dweller's grip on us.
Exactly. It's about empowering ourselves to make choices that are good for us instead of being pulled down by fear or desire or all those limiting beliefs that the dweller represents.
Okay, what about this angel of the presence that Bailey talks about? How does that fit in?
Think of the angel of the presence as the opposite of the dweller. It's our highest potential, the voice of our intuition, the guiding force pushing us toward truth, love, and wisdom.
So as we fight to overcome the dweller, we're also aligning ourselves with the angel.
Exactly. It's this dynamic back and forth between these two forces inside of us. The more we nurture the qualities of the angel, the clearer our vision becomes and the easier it is to deal with the challenges on our spiritual path.
It's like having an inner compass that helps us stay on track.
I love that analogy, and it reminds me of something Bailey wrote about the mind. She warns us about falling into the illusion of ideas, where we start to think our mental concepts are the absolute truth.
So even our thoughts can be a source of illusion.
Oh, absolutely. The mind loves to create structures and systems. It wants to categorize and analyze everything. But sometimes those structures become like boxes that trap us and stop us from seeing the bigger picture or being open to new ideas.
And that's where intuition comes in.
Yeah.
It gives us that direct knowing that goes beyond what our mind can understand.
Exactly. And one of the practices Bailey recommends for developing intuition is contemplation. She calls it the dispeller of illusion.
Contemplation sounds interesting. Can you tell me more about how it works?
It's not just thinking or analyzing, it's about finding that inner stillness. That deep listening daily suggests going somewhere quiet where you won't be disturbed and just letting your mind settle. As you do this, you might start to feel a subtle shift in your awareness, like a feeling of connection to something bigger than yourself.
So it's about silencing all that mental noise and tuning into that inner voice of wisdom.
Exactly. And as we practice contemplation, we become more open to what our soul is trying to tell us, to those intuitive insights that can guide us through the fog of illusion.
And that ability to see through illusion seems even more important when we think about the concept of Maya.
You're right. Maya isn't just about individual illusions. It's about the very nature of reality as we see it. Bailey calls it the illusion of separateness, the belief that we're all isolated and disconnected from each other and from the source of everything.
So it's like a giant cosmic illusion that shapes our whole experience of the world.
Exactly. And this illusion of separateness causes all kinds of problems. Competition, conflict, fear, greed, you name it. It's at the root of so much human suffering.
So to overcome Maya, we have to recognize our interconnectedness. We have to realize we're all part of this one big tapestry of life.
Absolutely. And it's not just some nice philosophical idea. It's a massive shift in how we see things, and it can have a huge impact on our lives and the world around us.
It's like that saying, we are all drops in the same ocean.
Exactly. And Bailey suggests that one of the best ways to break free from the illusion of Maya is to practice right understanding, right thought, and right action.
Can you give me an example of what that would look like in everyday life?
Okay, let's say you're feeling angry or resentful towards someone.
Right.
Understanding would be recognizing that this person, just like you, has their own fears and limitations, that they're a reflection of you in some way. Right thought would be choosing to focus on forgiveness and compassion instead of negativity. And right action might be reaching out to that person, offering a kind word or gesture, even if you don't really feel like it.
So it's about choosing to act from a place of love and understanding even when it's hard.
Exactly. And Bailey says that even these small acts of kindness, of aligning ourselves with truth and compassion, can have a huge impact on the world.
That's like we're weaving a new reality thread by thread.
And speaking of weaving, Bailey talks about the technique of light as a way to clear away not only our own personal glamours, but also what she calls world glamour.
Okay, now we're getting into some really interesting stuff. What is this world glamour, and how does this technique actually work? So you were saying something about world glamour. What exactly is that?
Well, think of it like those big illusions that affect whole societies and cultures. It's all the misinformation and fear-based thinking and systems that keep things unfair and cause so much suffering.
So like the glamour of materiality, but on a global scale.
Yeah, exactly. Bailey thought world glamour thrives on that feeling of separation, those beliefs that divide us and stop us from seeing our shared humanity.
You mentioned a technique of light to deal with it. It sounds pretty out there.
It might sound mystical, but it's really about using focused thought and intention to shine a light on those shadows of illusion and break them down.
So instead of fighting darkness with darkness, we're bringing in the light to those places where negativity and fear are taking root.
Exactly. And Bailey gives us specific visualizations for this. One is to picture a bright golden sun above your head, and then imagine that light getting bigger and bigger, covering your community, your country, and eventually the whole planet.
So it's about cultivating a sense of connection and holding on to that vision of a more enlightened and compassionate world.
Right. And Bailey thought that if enough people did this, it would create a ripple effect and slowly shift our collective consciousness toward more understanding and harmony.
It's a good reminder that even our own thoughts and intentions can have a big impact.
And it goes back to that idea of astral weather that we were talking about earlier. Remember Bailey's idea that the astral plane, the realm of thoughts and emotions, is something we've created with our collective consciousness?
Yeah, that was a pretty wild concept.
Well, if that's true, it means we're all contributing to the quality of that astral atmosphere. Every thought, every feeling is adding to that big pool of energy.
So if we keep feeding it with fear and anger and negativity, we're creating a toxic environment for everyone, not just ourselves.
Exactly. But the good news is the opposite is also true. When we cultivate love and compassion and understanding, we're actually raising the vibration of the astral plane and making it a more supportive and harmonious environment for all of us.
It's like choosing to plant flowers instead of weeds in our collective garden of consciousness.
I love that analogy. It really highlights the idea that we're not just passively receiving this astral energy, we're actively creating it.
And that makes the whole idea of spiritual growth even more important. It's not just about our own enlightenment. It's about contributing to a collective awakening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Bailey believed one of the key things that triggers this awakening is the process of initiation. Remember, she saw initiation not as a one-time event, but as a series of transformative experiences that happen throughout our lives.
Right. And you said these experiences can help us break free from old patterns and really live up to our potential.
And every time we go through an initiation, we're not only changing ourselves, but we're also playing a part in humanity's
It's
evolution.
like we're all climbing a mountain together.
Yeah.
And every time one of us reaches a new peak, it inspires the others to keep going.
That's beautiful. And Bailey believed that as more people start on this journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth, it creates a momentum that could eventually lead to a global shift in consciousness.
It's a vision of a world where compassion and understanding and cooperation are the driving forces instead of fear, greed, and competition.
Exactly. And while it might seem like a far-off dream, Bailey believed this transformation is not only possible, but it's going to happen.
And it all starts with each of us taking responsibility for our own thoughts, feelings, and actions, and choosing to align ourselves with those qualities that represent our best selves.
That's it in a nutshell. We're not helpless. We have the power to choose to create and to help build a better future.
This has been such an amazing deep dive into the work of Alice Bailey. I feel like I have a much better grasp on these ideas and how we can actually use them in our lives.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you. I hope this deep dive has given you some insights and maybe even inspired you on your own journey of growth and transformation.
It definitely has. And thank you to all of you for joining us on this exploration. We hope you'll keep diving deep into the things that fascinate you. And remember, even the smallest acts of kindness and awareness can make a difference in creating a brighter future for everyone.